Robotics, gotten very big. In 2011, some people that are very much into predicting these kinds of things said, you know, robotics, by about the year 2025, they're going to really begin to take off. A year later, Google invested a lot of money in 6 companies that are dealing with robotics. And all of a sudden, the industry just started burgeoning. This particular toy helicopter here, 8 years ago, wasn't even made, okay? 5 years ago, it would have cost $700. You know what it costs today? On Amazon, about $20. $20. In fact, there's a gyro mechanism in this particular helicopter that 30 years ago, space shuttle engineers would have paid over $100 million to develop it. Tell me that things aren't moving quickly. Robotics, from an industrial standpoint, are really starting to take off. Here, for example, Baxter Robot. Baxter Robot, $22,000. $22,000, and it can be programmed by people in your factory. So it's got a simple enough interface to do that kind of thing. It's beginning to make manufacturing cheap enough that we're beginning to pull labor or pull manufacturing jobs, in essence, back from China. Think what kind of thing that's going to have on the effect of the Chinese economy, because they're getting paid off their cheap labor force. So, and think what happens if they end up calling their debt. I mean, there can be huge implications out of this. Microsoft uses guard robots to roam around their campus. Does that remind you of R2-D2? It does me. Amazon, some of you've probably seen the Amazon distribution centers. Amazon uses these robots, and they're projected to save $900 million a year using robots. The hotel industry, there's a hotel in Cupertino, California that opened this last fall, and they use this robot up here on the left. It's called Bottler Robot. And what happens if you wanted some more towels for your room, let's say, you call down to the front desk takes and loads towels into the top of this robot, they punch in your room number, the robot takes off. The robot goes up to the elevator, calls the elevator, in essence, interfaces with the elevator to get the right floor, goes to your room, avoiding things in the hall like people or a cart that's there or anything like that, avoiding things in the hall, goes up to your room, rings your phone to tell you that it's there. You open the door, you take the towels out, pat the robot on the head, and he goes off and goes back. Pretty amazing. But you know, it's not nearly as amazing as the one in Japan. This one is in Japan, this lifelike robot. A hotel that's going to be opening this summer in June. These robots will greet you at the front desk, check you in. They'll take your luggage, they'll clean your room. They speak several different languages and understand several different languages. Actually, the next step that they're going to make on these robots I thought was kind of interesting. They want to give them goosebumps and make them sweat. Don't quite understand why, but that's what they're wanting to do there. This hotel is opening with 10 of these robots and 10 employees, and that's all they're opening with. And honestly, the only reason they've got 10 employees is they're just a little concerned about what's going to happen because it's still in some ways an experiment, right? But their intent is they're going to get to the point that it is 90%, the hotel is 90% staffed by robots. Things are moving quickly, but it's not just robotics. Look here, 3D printing. In 2007, a good 3D printer, a 3D printer that cost $40,000, in 2014 would cost $100. That's an improvement of 400x in 7 years. Industrial robots, I already mentioned one $22,000 today, that would have cost $500,000 in 2008. 23 times improvement, just 5 years. Drones, you're seeing a lot about drones right now, not just Amazon, but as Amazon began pressing it, there's a lot of insurance companies that have been approved for drones lately. I don't know if you've noticed that, but that's something that's happening a tremendous amount. But drones have gone from $100,000 down to $700, 142 times improvement. Solar, we're getting great improvements in the solar industry. And honestly, one of the things that's happening is the rest of the energy industry is fighting it to some extent because they're concerned about it. It's amazing what's happening out there. But that's not all. How many of you heard of the Internet of Things? I mean, that's a pretty popular thing today. And really all it is talking about connecting a lot of sensors and a lot of different things to it, okay, to the current internet. I mean, really that's all it is. But what happened is, 10 years ago, we had about 500 million devices that were attached to the internet. Today, we got about 8 billion. Projections are, depending on who you're talking to, between 2020 and 2025, there's going to be somewhere between 20 billion and 50 billion devices attached to the internet. A decade later, 2035, there's supposed to be 1 trillion. We sit there and we think about the internet, and we don't, in some ways we don't think about it so much, but it's been around 30, 40 years, whatever you want to say, and we think that we've gone a long ways. When you start looking at these figures, we've gone about 1% of the way. We're just beginning to know what's going to happen with all these sensors that are out there, and it's huge. It's huge. All of this is bringing about a great disruption in business because the technology is allowing people to go out and attack these other companies and attack these other businesses. Think what's happened to the book industry. Think what's happened to the newspapers or travel or music or cameras. The GPS industry. It wasn't that long ago that I went out and bought a GPS. Let's say I was in Kansas City, so it was probably about 10 years ago. And I was late buying one, a GPS system for my car. Then they started installing them in cars, and now what do? It's on your phone. So you're seeing things, even something that got disrupted. GPS started disrupting maps, the mapping industry, and now that whole industry has been disrupted. So it's happening all over. But it's not just happening in these kinds of industries. It's hard to find any industry today that isn't being disrupted to some extent by technology. Even industries like construction. I mean, you think about construction, and we've got a lot of manual work that goes on there, right? And so you think, we're not going to have any big deal there. Well, it really has, because the technology has allowed a lot more collaboration between companies. As that collaboration comes, prices go down. The software that they use has become much more sophisticated, and the 3D printing is making a huge difference. In fact, the differences are so much when you start combining all these things. Projections are that the construction industry is going to lose 25% of their jobs within 10 years. That's not a small amount. It's not small at all. I mentioned 3D printing. Huge what's going on in 3D printing. They've already made 10,000 orthopedic knee implants for dogs and install them. And what happened when they did that? The surgery was easier. The dog recovered faster than ever before. You think that's not going to happen to humans? We're going to begin using that. Where 3D printing had been used just for prototypes on things, it's being used for real things now. Think about something as simple as, I can 3D print shoes now and get it to the pattern of your feet. Imagine what that's going to do to Dr. Scholl's or some of those kind of people, right? And it goes beyond that. It's not going to be very long. I mean, it's almost cheap enough now you can put it into your home, but it's not fast enough. And there's been a big investment on how are we going to speed up 3D printing. As that happens, what you're going to see is you're going to be able to print from your home. Tools, toys, a lot of different things, anything you design. And even, in fact, they're headed toward being able to print electronics there as well. Imagine being able to print your own iPhone in your home. Pretty amazing thought, isn't it? And beyond that, it's going to have an effect on companies, because think about the storage that a lot of companies have, because they say, we're going to keep these parts over here for these machines or these things that we're not producing anymore. And so we have to stockpile these parts back here. You know what's going to happen? At some point, it's going to be that they will just sell you the pattern, you insert it in, and you can print it at home. So tremendous things that are happening in the 3D printing industry. Again, let me go back to what the effect is on some of the other parts of the world. For example, China, that is well known for the cheaper plastics that they make. If we begin being able to print that at home, it has an effect on the global economy. And so we've got to be very well aware of that. Universities are being threatened by what's called a MOOC. Everybody heard of a MOOC, right? Massive online open courses. And basically what that means is it's open to anybody, and you won't have to, and so there's not regulations there, and attendance is not required. But there's a lot of learning that people are gaining out of those kind of things. And there are some universities that are really starting to explore that because they're worried about what's going to happen. Your modern Ford has a Texas Instrument processor in it. That Texas Instrument processor is 1.8 million times more powerful than one of the computers that we use to put people on the moon. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? iPhone 6, 1 million times more powerful than the IBM computer we used back in 1975, and that computer took up an entire room. And you're carrying it around in your pocket. And not only that, not only is it more powerful, it's cheaper. Remember the days, some of them even today, that some of your computers were $1,000 to $4,000? Your desktop computers? Your iPhone 6 has more power and can do more things, and it's cheaper. The future is just coming, and it's coming faster and faster than ever.